Dante Bennett, Tyrone West, and Anthony Anderson.
Three names that have led to very conflicting reports between law enforcement and eyewitnesses. This has now led to a newly proposed and highly controversial bill that will force all law enforcement throughout Maryland to wear body cameras. So how are law enforcement reacting?
No, we're not looking to implement body cameras in Washington County. Well, there are advantages and disadvantages. First of all, with a body camera, you're only going to capture a certain view of things. You're not going to get an entire view that the officer is going to have. The perceptions of periphery and things of that nature that, you know, all come into play when an officer makes a decision to take whatever action he does. And so, unfortunately, we've seen all too often where it's strictly what's on video that is taken in as evidence, you know, to be used one way or the other.
We're always evaluating any technology that comes along. We've been in contact and communication with a company out of Virginia who sells body-worn cameras. But right now there's no intention of us purchasing any. They are pretty costly, so next budget year obviously is going to come around sometime around April. We'll start looking at passing a new budget, but right now we don't have any intention of purchasing that.
So what are the advantages and disadvantages for both the public and law enforcement?
We live in a video age. I mean, nowadays, if it's not on video or not on tape, it didn't technically happen. I think having body-worn cameras gives the police the opportunity to show in real-time video evidence of what actually occurred, just as it does the citizens. And it sometimes clears up any misunderstanding or perception that they may have had during the incident. So is there a positive to it? Absolutely.
But does the new technology breed mistrust? It seems there are differing opinions.
I don't think it breeds mistrust. I think it just, it kind of bogs down the system, if you will. It's just more information that has to be presented and then accounted for, rather than getting the account from the individual that we were dealing with and the account from the police officer and presenting it to a neutral party for decision. It just kind of bogs down the system.
It does, and I think it's just a general philosophy in our society today. We don't trust government as a whole, and it is unfortunately dwindled down to law enforcement as well. You know, all professions have their bad apples, but you know, that's what the courts are for, and you know, why we have attorneys and judges and to take care of those issues. I don't think that we need to scrutinize law enforcement any more than any other profession.
Will the new technology slow down the legal process?
I think it adds to the time in charging procedures. Anytime we use video evidence, for example, when we conduct traffic stops, if during that traffic stop where there is a video recorder enacted, that video has to then be placed on property, has to be stored onto a compact disc for discovery to be given to the defense and also to the prosecution. So yes, that time, it will add to it. That's not a reason not to go to a body-worn camera, and it's definitely not the reason to go to a body-worn camera. So I just think there's positives and negatives, and all of that has to be weighed.
Potentially, but I don't think so. I think the officers would get used to it after a while. The problem that I see is that some of the cameras that are proposed, for example, those wearing on the glasses, would actually inhibit the ability of the officer to be able to see clearly, particularly peripheral vision and things like that. I would be totally against something like that you know, would obscure the officer's vision.
Budget concerns aside, what happens if a camera malfunctions?
That would be tremendous on a budget that, first of all, we aren't budgeted for cameras. Second of all, there are many other priorities that we would have. And it's not just the initial purchase of the camera, you also have the upkeep, the maintenance of the camera. And then what happens when that camera malfunctions when there's a significant incident? You know, does it look like the officer turned the camera off or that he's trying to hide something, when in fact it was simply a malfunction of the camera?
So will body cameras ever be a reality?
Well, I mean, there's a process, and in that process it has to go to Annapolis, it has to go before lawmakers, a bill has to be, or an amendment to the law has to be proposed, it then has to go through committee, so it's going to take a while to go through. The difficult level of that, or the difficultness of that, is going to depend on who's proposing it, how well is it accepted by the defense community, how well is it accepted by the prosecution. So, you know, that's kind of a crapshoot at this point, it's unknown.
Reporting for the Herald Mail and HMTV6, this is Raychel, Harvey-Jones.